A good friend of the faith-driven movement and entrepreneur Neil says that many of us are running from something. We are either trying to escape it or we're in danger of running head on into the very trauma, heartache, or brokenness we're trying to outrun. God, in his infinite grace and mercy, can use whatever it is for his glory to fuel our determination, grit, and hustle as faith-driven entrepreneurs. But if we're not careful, we can find ourselves taking a turn down a dangerous and destructive path. Of course, comes in the freedom we find only in the gospel. Christ's victory on the cross means our loss, pain, trauma, and hurt can become the catalyst for change within ourselves and perhaps even in the ventures we create. In order for this to happen, we need to take active steps towards creating good habits of physical and emotional health. We need to establish guardrails to help ensure that we don't veer off course, and we need to surround ourselves with people we can count on in the good times and bad. Anne Beiler, the founder of Auntie Anne's Gourmet Pretzels, shares the twists and turns from our own story as an entrepreneur. Some of them are heart-wrenching, and still, what we learn from Anne is that in Christ, there is hope and healing.
So Psalm 40, verse 1 through 3 is my story in the Bible. It depicts my whole life in 3 verses. I waited patiently for the Lord. He heard my cry, and then he came to me. Then he put my life back together, and he put my feet on a solid rock. But then he put the finishing touch on it. He said, I'll give you a new song to sing. And then when you're done singing, then you'll tell my story. You'll tell the story, what I've done for you, and many people will see and hear and know me. Growing up on an Amish farm, the memories that I have are really all about family, community, church, hard work, and living in an era where it was all about getting the job done. There were 8 of us kids, and I think I learned early on that teamwork is really great. It works well on the farm, and we all had a sense of responsibility. It's what you do growing up Amish, is you help mom and dad, and it's just a part of your DNA. I think that the values I learned on the farm was the fact that there's always something to do. You have one shot at doing it the first time and doing it the best you can, so you don't waste time or energy and having to repeat yourself. So what I learned was doing things I didn't feel like doing. It's called perseverance. Without that experience, I would probably never have been able to fulfill the mission of Auntie Anne's, because it was intense, it was hard work, and it was nonstop. Growing up in an Amish family, it's really all about family. And I remember thinking in my probably early teens, my whole dream was to be a wife and a mom and have my own family. That was my goal. And typically that is still the Amish thought process or goal as little girls, is to have your own family. And career is not, it's really not in the vocabulary of Amish people. So I really had no dreams or plans beyond family life. You know, I think that most women, most of us, want to find a good man. And wow, I found a good man, Jonas Beiler. I started dating him when I was 16, and we met through our youth group that we had at my church. I was 19 and a half when I married him, and he was 21. And I feel like I hit the jackpot that day. I feel like the key to a successful marriage is for your husband to love God more than he loves you. And I've found in Jonas a man that loved God more than he loved me.
It was a good time for us. I would call it a storybook marriage. It couldn't have been better. Just look forward to having a family and providing for them. That's what our culture taught us to do. Work hard, have a family, and have fun doing it.
We had our first daughter, Luana, and then we had our second daughter, Angela, and we were on our way to having our little family of maybe 4, 5, or 6 kids is what we were thinking. We both wanted to be involved in church, and we both love God and wanted to serve Him in whatever capacity we could. So we had 2 kids, and we were very active in a church that we had started in Lancaster County. It was called Victory Chapel. Became youth pastors in that church at Victory Chapel. We were radically changed inside with the relationship with Jesus. It was no longer religion or the Amish faith or the Amish way. It was really about a relationship with Christ. Growing up, I always believed that if you love God and you keep His commandments, that He would bless me and life will be wonderful. It was another day, just another day, a beautiful Monday morning. We had Teen Challenge guys that had come to minister at our church, and they spent the night at our house. There was about 4 of them. And we had finished doing breakfast, and my husband was taking them back to church. And as my husband and the guys left the house, my 19-month-old Angie slipped out of the house with them. As they drove the car out of the lane, I realized that Angie was walking through the yard to my mom's house, which was next door. And between my mom's house and our house, my dad was a stone manufacturing, he did permanent siding. And my sister worked for my dad by making the permastone. Her and Angie had a bond that was, every morning she'd stop the tractor and pick up Angie and they'd talk, and they were very connected. And so that morning, it was earlier than usual, and so my sister Fi was really not expecting her at that time of the day. And my sister did not see her, and she was backed over and killed instantly. I was confused. When Angie was killed, I was totally confused. I didn't understand why God. Remember, I really thought that if I did everything just right, then my life would just be great. God would bless us. So for many years, I lived in the whys of tragedy, and our storybook marriage came crashing down.
After the death of our daughter, our culture grieves quietly, not talk about it a whole lot. And as a result, we just drifted apart because we didn't communicate anymore.
So 5 months later, I went to my pastor to sort it out and to hopefully talk about my confusion. And when I left his office, he seduced me the first meeting I had with him, and it ended up in a 6-year-long relationship that became my deep, dark secret. The pain of Angie leaving was one kind of pain, but then the guilt of this secret nearly killed me. I was 92 pounds. I had headaches all the time. My back was giving me problems. My heart was hurting constantly to the point where I went to the doctor thinking I was having a heart attack. So physically, spiritually, every piece of me was broken. There was nothing left. I was being a mom to 2 daughters. We had another baby, and we existed together in our, at that time, little double-wide trailer. As time went on, we discovered that there were other women in the church that he had seduced, and it was just so many twisted things that were happening. I realized that if I didn't tell Jonas what had been happening in my life, then somebody else probably would. And at the time, I didn't understand that the power of confession was the beginning of setting myself free, but that's what I did. The look on his face said it all for me, and I realized then, wow, he'll tell me to leave and we'll get a divorce.
That day that she told me about what was going on, I felt like I was stripped of my masculinity, my spirituality, and my self-esteem all at one time. I don't remember of a time when I was ever lower than I was that day. Out of desperation, I called a counselor. So I called this guy, and he was very gracious and understanding. And he said to me something that changed my life forever. He said, I don't want to set you up for failure and more devastation. But if there is a chance that you can salvage your marriage, it will be because you're able to love your wife the way Christ loves you. So without a doubt, that revolutionized my life.
He came back to the house maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said, "Hon, I knew that you were unhappy for many years, and I thought it was because of Angie." And he said, "You know, I do want you to be happy. I'll do whatever I can to help you." And he said, "But promise me just one thing, that you won't leave in the middle of the night with a note on the dresser. And that if you leave, just tell me that you want to go. And I'll help you find a place, and I'll help you pack your bags. But you have to take the girls with you because they need their mom." That was the greatest surprise of all. I felt so unworthy of everything good in life. And for him to tell me that they need their mother was such a surprise. But it was the first time in 7 years that I felt a spark of hope. Just a teeny spark of hope that he actually still believes in me when I couldn't believe it myself. So from that point, we made a start. We started. And he did tell me a couple days later that I don't want to ever hear the word divorce in this home. We're not going to get a divorce. We're going to make this work. If you want to try, we're going to make it work.
To get back to the place where we could be close or feel intimate again took a long time. And I can remember this like it was yesterday. We were walking with our family in the mall. All of a sudden I realized that she slipped her hand into mine. It was the first time in probably 9.5 years that I felt her come towards me in any physical way at all. I thought, wow. I felt like I was 9 foot tall. But at the same time, I realized that this was God doing a work not only in my heart, but in her heart as well.
So I spent a lot of time in prayer, but now it's not praying out of guilt and shame, but it's more prayer for God help me to become what I need to be.
After our marriage experienced a dimension of healing, I became more and more aware of how helpful the idea of marriage counseling was for Anne and I. And I was just bent on helping my own people warm up to concepts of counseling, because this is a background that I came from where people are basically quiet when they go through hard times.
We definitely knew that counseling other couples or helping them, listening to them basically, is what we felt in our heart was like we were passionate about helping other marriages. And so we immediately started doing counseling in our home and at the church and together. And I started making soft pretzels at a farmer's market to support Jonas so that he could counsel full-time and do it free for anybody who wanted. And so that's what he did. And I went to work to make some money to pay the bills. First time in my life that I was the breadwinner. I just started enjoying baking these pretzels, and I'd never made a soft pretzel until at that point. I was 40 years old. Realized that I'm actually pretty good at managing as well. And we quickly grew the pretzel business. We found the recipe. It was kind of it was a mistake that we made, and very quickly I realized that my love of baking that I had learned became the tool that God used for me then to help my husband be able to do marriage counseling as a free service. It was the greatest joy in my life, that out of our pain, our purpose was born. Shortly after that, we bought a store of our own in 1988. The company went from 1 store to 2 the first year, 12 stores the next year, 35 the following, and 50 the following. So by 1995, we were in Jakarta, Indonesia. But it was during the first 5 years of the company that I began to feel I'm in a world that I knew nothing of. Business, zero. Franchising, below zero, nothing. I didn't even know what the word meant. But I knew it was not about us. It was about God. It was about His plan. It was about Auntie Anne's becoming a company of excellence. I'm still amazed at the way it all came together for us. That's the power of redemption. You know, when God puts it all back together for you, there's a greater story to where someday you can look at all of it and you're just like, wow, I can't believe this. I can't believe I am where I am. This is amazing to me. Like, look where I was. Look where I am. And God has allowed me to share my story for His glory.
We're so grateful to Anne for her vulnerability and transparency. Hers is not an easy story to share, but it's an important one for us to hear. The damage and wounding she experienced is something no one should have to endure. And yet, even in the depths of her darkest years, God was with her at every moment. Like Anne, our past doesn't have to define us, but it can be used to guide us. I hope this session softens your heart to the hope and fulfillment found only in our loving and grace-filled relationship with Christ. The journey of an entrepreneur is lonely. It has high stakes, and we need people by our side to help us see our blind spots. Talk about this session in your group and how it relates to the journey you're on. Open yourselves up to learning from one another. Be transparent and honest with each other. What you get out of this time together will only be as enriching and life-giving as what you put into it. See you next time.